Think about the best objection handling reframe that you know on how to handle a partner objection, and imagine someone used that exact same reframe on you right now. You'd immediately think, this guy must think I'm retarded and have no idea what he's doing. And that's exactly what your prospects in a B2B setting are thinking, because in B2B, business owners are sophisticated. They know exactly what you're doing. They've been through sales training. They see the exact same objection handling fake role plays that you see on your feed as well. And when you come at them with these extremely long-winded, indirect, complex, vague reframes that are super hard to understand, they feel like they're being talked down to, which means what? Their guard goes up, they stop being honest with you, and you spend the rest of the call chasing a surface level objection that isn't even their real concern. And the problem isn't that you're bad at sales, it's that no one's ever actually taught you how to handle these objections in a B2B setting, where being direct isn't just simpler, but it's also a lot easier to scale if you're an offer owner. It's also the best way to handle objections that actually works. Now, I've helped generate over $10 million across coaching businesses and agencies, and one of the best skills that you can possibly learn, especially when it comes to objection handling, is knowing how to break the fourth wall, even with the most sophisticated prospects, so that they have no choice but to be honest with you and ultimately make a change now and not later. Not have to go think about it, go talk to their spouse, their goldfish, none of that. Now, what you're about to see is the full mind map. This took me months to create, to distill down exactly how to handle every single objection that a B2B prospect will throw at you. Not only what to say, but how to handle every single circumstance with the right pacing, the right tonality, and ultimately how to have a real conversation that actually consistently closes deals. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so here we are. This is the entire full mind map. You're gonna see literally how to handle every single objection. I know this looks complicated as shit, but it's actually really fucking simple as soon as you start using it. I'm gonna give you a quick overview as to what we're gonna be covering, just so you have full clarity on what it's gonna look like, and I'll also timestamp each objection so you guys can easily skip to it. If there's one that you're just struggling with right now, feel free to just use that cursor down below. But you're gonna see the exact process for tying off value, dropping price, how to do that, what do you need to tie off to eliminate each objection, and then ultimately how to handle every single objection. And so the first thing I want to break down real quick is the overall flow of like, how do you even handle objections? And there's a systematic process that I help train with all my students. And the exact process that we use is for isolating the real objection. And Albert Einstein once said that if he had 1 hour to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes identifying it and 5 minutes actually solving it. So the most important thing is that we actually identify what is the real objection that we're actually facing, because I'm sure you guys have heard of smoke screens, and when people aren't being honest with you, you also experience it on calls where people aren't always going to be upfront with you the first time around when you ask them a question. So this is going to show you how to systematically identify the real objection and then how to handle it once you know exactly what's happening. So the first step that you need to know is you have to tie off value, because when people find value in what you're offering and logistically they can actually afford the service itself, then at that point, just logically speaking, if someone sees the value that they can see get an ROI, etc., and they can also afford the investment to get the ROI, they would simply just buy, just like you would if something was guaranteed to happen. Now that's the main caveat, is that if they can afford something, they see the value in it, all that's actually left is fear and uncertainty. And so you're going to see exactly how to isolate that through this process with the exact wording, the little nuances, and then also how to overcome any smoke screens and fear objections. And just starting off, after we go over your presentation, you're going to tie off value. Now, by the way, like if you haven't dialed in your presentation just yet, go do that real quick. It's super simple. I have a video that breaks down exactly how to have perfect positioning and the perfect offer, and then also create like a little cheat sheet for you where you can literally just put in some AI prompts and at least give like a baseline. But definitely go check that out. Links down below. But starting off, after your presentation is covered, you're going to tie value, right? You're going to say, hey, before we dive into the investment, do you feel like with what we covered, the structure of everything, we can get you from wherever they're at to where they want to be? And in this case, you can say, from $50K a month to $250,000 a month, given the system that we're going to be able to install. And then they're going to say yes. And if they don't, if they're like, I don't know, or if they say yeah, but they don't sound certain, this is where emotional intelligence comes in. And you guys are emotionally intelligent enough to know when someone means what they say or not. A lot of people struggle with objection handling because they're so focused on the word track, which again, like I'm going to cover that, but you have to be a human, as funny as that sounds. Like you have to know when someone is not being fully honest with you by just hearing it in their voice. See how their body language is. How are they reacting to what you just said? And so in these cases, what you need to do to be able to consistently tie up value is, again, make sure that they actually believe that what you're going to do is going to get them the results they want. If someone is hesitant, they're like, yeah, you can just call it out and just be direct with people. That's what I'm talking about. You don't have to be like super indirect or give some like roundabout reason. You just be like, hey, like, and you sound a little bit uncertain. Like, what's behind that? Super simple, nothing crazy, no fancy analogy that's needed. So just, hey, you sound a little uncertain. What's behind that? And a lot of times they're like, oh, I have this concern. And then you handle the concern and then you double down and ask this again. Okay, cool. Given that whatever their concern was is taken care of and like that's fully covered there. Before we dive into the investment, like I said, I just want to make sure, do you feel like based on what we covered with the structure of everything that we can get you from where you are now to ultimately where you want to be. And they say yes, like cool, because they say it with way more certainty. You're then going to ask why. Anytime someone takes a step in your direction, especially during objection handling, you're going to see some nuances here in a second, but you're going to always want to tie down that why. So if someone's like being like super against what you're saying when you're objection handling, you always want to say, ask them why as soon as they take that step. So after that, this is my favorite 2-step tie down to just completely tie a value. And so I like to say, given we've helped X amount of companies, however many companies you've helped, hundreds, dozens, whatever, get to their goal, wherever they want to be, is there any reason they feel like they wouldn't be able to get the same, if not similar results? And so you literally ask that. Given we've helped over 20 plus different agencies just like yourself double their prices and double their close rate, is there any reason whatsoever you feel like we wouldn't be able to help you get the same, if not similar results? That question is designed for them to say no. So it's super easy. It's like, no, I don't see any reason giving you help so many other people. So what do? We completely tie out value because they see how all of their problems are going to get solved by our solution. And then given we've done it for so many people just like them, they don't see any reason they wouldn't be able to get the same results. So that just completely ties it off for value. And that all that leaves less now is logistics. Can they afford it? And then from there, uncertainty in the solution or something around the process or maybe the investment, like whatever it is. And we'll dive into how to cover that. And when you go over the price, you're going to say, okay, the investment in order to get you the outcome they want, whatever it is, $250K a month is $10K, $20K, $40K, $50K, whatever it is, for whatever time period. If you guys sell on like a 3-month contract or 6-month or it's just month to month, say that there. And then the most important thing is after you drop price, you don't want it like some people's old methodology is you drop price and you just stare at them and it's pretty fucking awkward. Instead of just staring at them after you drop the investment, what people really need is clarity. They need to know what the next steps are and just have a little bit more certainty because they're already a bit uncertain whenever it comes to making a change in business and life in general. So you want to say the next steps, and that's what we're covering here. So you're going to say, hey, and the next steps are pretty basic. It's just taking care of the initial investment so that we can then schedule your onboarding call and your initial audit. And then from there, I'll build the game plan and have ads live by next Monday. And then what you're going to do is just ask them, do they have any questions on that? And they'll say, no. I always like to say, do you have any questions on that? Or is that pretty straightforward? Does that work for you? And literally seeing what they say based from there, they're going to say, yes, there you go. And you got the sale, take the payment. Or they're going to say, nah, like I just need to think about it. Or I need to go talk to my partner. The first thing I want to do is cover the think about it, which is probably the most common one that you get all the time. Like I was saying before, a think about it objection is not a real objection. Like whenever someone says they need to go think about it, it is a smokescreen for an underlying concern. Maybe it's about the logistics of the finances. Maybe they're just scared that you're not going to be able to deliver on the results that they want. And I have that limiting belief because maybe they had bad past experiences. And so the first step you're going to do is right here. As you can see, you're just going to call it out and just be direct. So it just cuts through any bullshit and gets straight to their main concern. So there's no like fluffy reframes or anything crazy. You can literally just say, hey, you can be direct with me. What's behind that? Like what's behind you wanting to go and think about it? And you'd be surprised. The way you say it is really important too. Like you want to be able to say, if you notice my body language and my tonality around it, I'm just like, hey, you can be direct with me. Like what's behind that? And I'm kind of just like nonchalant. Like I drop my shoulders a little bit. And I'm just like, you can be real with me. Like what's going on? Because if I'm like super stern, I'm like, you can be direct with me. What's happening? You're gonna be like, whoa, what the fuck was that? You have to be almost, I want you to think about it like you're being very approachable. It's easy to talk to you, like and easy to be honest with you. I don't know how old you guys are, if you guys have any kids or anything, but I've noticed this for example, with like my best friend. Whenever I have this exact tonality, he is super honest with me. Obviously he's my best friend, right? But there are times when I can be super direct with him with how things are, or if he's has a limiting belief or whatever's happening. But when I have this exact tonality, it's like his guard just completely lowers and he's able to just tell me and be honest with me. And this happens all the time. It's the same thing with prospects. Whenever you're kind of stern throughout your conversation or anything like that, or maybe you're on the opposite end and you're just been kind of mellow the entire call, using this line is what's going to get people to be way more honest with you, way more consistently. So just literally say, you can be direct with me, like what's behind that? And then from there, they're going to say, oh yeah, I just need to think about it or whatever BS. If they just double down on the fact that they need to go think about it, you're just going to say, yeah, I mean, that's not a problem. Is this just a case where you don't have the full investment, or are the funds not the issue? It's just a certainty that what we do will work for you. And so it has to make them pick. Is it that they can't afford it, or that they can afford it and they just don't know if it's going to help them? And when you make it this simple, this is a this or that question to isolate whether it is money or certainty. And so from here, what we're going to do is then ask them, okay, if depending on what they say, if they say, yeah, funds aren't the issue, it's just a certainty, then you're going to go here around fear, which is, hey, hypothetically, if us working together was guaranteed to get you the results, we'll be working together right now. And so what you're going to say immediately, as soon as they're like, yeah, funds aren't the issue, it's just kind of the certainty or whatever last thing they say, if they just say that funds are not the issue, then you're going to ask this follow-up question, which admits that they're just fearful or looking for a bit more certainty. So you're going to say, hey, humor me for a second. Hypothetically, if us working together was guaranteed to get you the results you're looking for, would we be working together right now? Like, would it even be a question in your mind if we were going to move forward or not? And every time, be like anyone logically, if they can afford something, the results are guaranteed, they would just buy. That's why you're logic trapping them to get them to admit that they need some more certainty. And then from there, you're just going to say, okay, well, is it fair to say you're just looking for a bit more certainty then? You're calling it out. So notice with B2B prospects, you're just way more direct. Say, hey, is it fair to say you're just looking for a bit more certainty then? And once you tie that down and they say yes, we then go over into this fear reframe. So all you're going to do is follow this arrow over here. And this is the most important part that I want to cover, is that intentions are everything. like truly, because if you sound like you're on the call and you're just dying for their money, like you're just trying, like that's all you care about, they're going to feel that. Because imagine any normal conversation you have, we as humans are really good at sniffing out bullshit, especially sophisticated B2B prospects, because they're business owners, they're in sales, they get it. And so if you're coming from a place though of care versus looking for the commission or just looking for the sale in general, they are going to feel that. So you need to make sure that your thought process going into objection handling is like, I just genuinely want to help this person. Like, I don't care if they buy, I don't care if they move forward. All I need to do is focus on helping this person. And if they have a limiting belief or they have this underlying concern that's preventing them from changing their business, which is ultimately preventing them from changing their lives and everyone around them, you are doing them a disservice by not challenging their way of thinking. There's a lot of different types of sales, right? Like you can think of two spectrums. One is like super high pressure, intense, like you're just fucking digging into them and pressuring them. And that does not work because people are going to run away very fast. And there's the other side where you just let them go. You don't even challenge them. You're just like, do what you want. And like that, each of those things can work. But from my personal experience and what I've seen across dozens and dozens of different companies and auditing so many different people is that when you have the fine balance right in the middle, right? Like just like the sweet spot between the two, that is where you win, because you're direct enough where you're not letting their limiting belief just overcome them or their underlying concern. And you're not so direct and so pressure intensive that you're causing this amount of pressure that just pushes them away. And so you're going to see right here is exactly how we handle the fear objection. So once they admit they're looking for more certainty, they agree into that frame, and like don't move on until they admit and agree with that. Because if they're like, no, I'm not scared or whatever, well, it's like you're just going to double down on the same thought process. It's like, all right, well, help me understand. Like we just covered, you can afford this. Like the investment's not going to put you on the streets, right? Okay, cool. If this was guaranteed to work out, just hypothetically speaking, like humor me for a second, would there be any question if we'd be working together or not right now? And they're like, no. Cool. So is it fair to say the only difference between you making a decision or not is just a level of certainty you have in getting the result? Like you can be real with me. So if you notice what I'm saying, like you can be real with me. Other language that you can use is like, hey, I'm on your team. I genuinely want to help. Whenever you're saying that, they realize your intentions a lot more because of the language you're using. If I'm just like straight up hardcore objection handling, but I'm not actually conveying my intentions behind what I'm saying, they can take it a totally different way. And so you guys have probably experienced this. Think about a time in your life when someone was being really direct with you. If that's happened to you, hopefully at some point someone's been direct with you. In that moment, I'm sure you've experienced someone who's been really direct and they said it in not such a nice way with their tonality that made you upset or made you mad. I've experienced this. I think everyone I've ever talked to has experienced this. So I hope you have at some point as well, where that happened. And when that happens, it's because of their intentions behind what they're saying. So like imagine if, for example, your best friend was like chronically overweight, just on their like life support level, super close to just dying tomorrow, overweight. Hey, brother, you are extremely overweight and it is concerning. That is really uncomfortable and not a very nice thing to say to your best friend. But that conversation is necessary so they ultimately finally make a change. Because if you don't have that uncomfortable conversation, where do you think they're going to end up? They're probably not going to have a very long life. But even though it's uncomfortable in the moment, the other person may not like you for saying what actually is the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. But ultimately, if they never internalize the facts, the chances of them changing is very, very low. When you're direct with them, even if you're uncomfortable saying it, you know it's for the greater good. Because 5-10 years from then, what if that changes their life and they finally make a change and now they're healthy weight, they feel way more confident in their skin, they live a way longer life than they originally would have. Imagine what difference that would make. And so that's what I want you to have going into your mind is your intentions behind what you're saying. You're doing it because you genuinely care. It's not about the money. It's not about securing the deal. It's because you genuinely want to help these people. That's how you should always be selling, because it's very true. So same way I help people and have so much conviction behind what I say is because I genuinely want to help them more than anything, more than closing the deal, more than making more money. I just get true fulfillment out of helping them. And that's the exact same mentality I need you guys to have. The reason I'm harping on it so much is because that is like the 80-20 of objection handling is your intentions, because people can feel that. It doesn't matter if you have the perfect reframe, the perfect word track. It really boils down to your intentions behind what you're saying. And the other 20% is like, this is exactly what to say to convey those points as well. Diving into this right now, what you're going to start off with is being direct. You're going to say, hey, I get it, but here's the thing, that level of certainty you're looking for, it's just never coming. You've been in the game long enough to know this. When you first started your business to where you are now, were you like 100% certain the entire time? Like you knew exactly what was going to happen at every moment? Everyone's going to say no. No one has a fucking magical ball. And you're going to see that in a second too. So I'm just going to break down each box. You're first being direct, because business owners appreciate when you're direct. If you're using this insane reframe, it's just not helpful. And ultimately, they're more likely to say, oh, I got to get off the call, or I have a meeting coming up, or hard stop. Like they just give you whatever smoke screen to just get out the call. And then the next part of this is going into their identity. So we're going to appeal to that person's ego, and we're going to say that they've been in the game long enough to know this. So we're basically saying, hey, like your experience. And if they don't agree with this statement, that indirectly is saying that they have not been in the game long enough to actually internalize this concept. And every sophisticated business owner does actually know this stuff. The level of certainty anyone's looking for, whether it's like a guarantee or absolute certainty, it's just impossible to happen. No one can ever guarantee you an outcome in life, because they can't guarantee that you're going to do the necessary steps on your side to actually get the result. And they can't guarantee there's no external factors that are going to come in, because what if you get hit by a fucking bus and you can't even run your business? What happened to of the guarantee, right? In any condition, we want them to understand that nothing in life is guaranteed, because once they start believing that, they're way more likely. That's the first step to making a change in spite of not having a guarantee, because they have to know that guarantee they're looking for, it's not real. After that point, we're going to give them a reality check. And you're going to hear exactly what this sounds like. So you're going to say, it's the same thing at every stage of business. You're never going to know. Can you see how at every stage to level up, there's going to be a lack of clarity? You're going to say, yeah, but right now you're looking for absolute certainty, which doesn't exist because no one has a magical crystal ball. So can you see how that directly contradicts with getting to the next level? So what do? This is a logic trap. We're leaning into the fact that in order to grow, there is going to be a lack of clarity, because at every stage of growing their business, they didn't have clarity. That's how they got to where they are at this point. If they're doing $100,000 a month or $1 billion a month, every sophisticated business owner has experienced uncertainty, and they know there's always uncertainty at every new level, because whenever we're getting uncomfortable, that means we're growing by definition. Because if you're always inside your comfort zone, you would never be learning anything new. And if you're never learning anything new, you're never growing. That's why we're helping them realize and get buy-in that their level of certainty they're looking for that doesn't exist is directly contradicting with them getting to the next level. At that point, they're going to say, yeah, I can see that. And then you're going to say, and you know that uncertainty will never go away. You can either allow it to constrict you and prevent you from doing what you know you need to do, or you can shift that into taking massive action. Then you're going to ask them, how do you want to use what you're feeling, knowing who you want to become and what you want to accomplish? And so the reason that we say this obvious binary question, right? But ultimately it is a logic trapping them, or even the most sophisticated people, they have to answer in a certain way. Like people are analytical, they want to be right. People have high ego, they want to be right. When they have to answer this question the right way, only correct answer is to shift what they're feeling into taking action. And then that's when we dive into the closing question, which is asking them, how do they want to use what they're feeling in order to become what they want to be and actually accomplish those things? Become the business owner who's doing $250K a month. Like using identity is the strongest driver. I know it's like a very B2C thing. Oh, identity, like all this like fancy stuff. And it kind of goes against, what I'm saying, but you can still use identity at every level. It's just a bit more subtle in different places. With B2C, you're going hard into the pain with identity. Like you're asking them all these beliefs and crazy stuff. This is one simple question to ask them who they want to be, what type of business owner they want to be. And that is a great closing question, because that is ultimately what helps drive people to make a change, is they think about who do they want to become. In order to become a business owner who makes $250K a month, they have to take risks like a business owner who makes $250K a month. If they still object and they're like, yeah, I need to think about it, whatever, or they're super against making the decision right now, you're just going to say, is there any reason you feel like we wouldn't get you the same results given we've done it for 100 plus other people? So you're tying it back to logic. And what we really need to attack is their decision-making process. In B2B, you only really need to go about these 2 layers deep. There's a lot of other reframes you can use too, but 2 layers deep, you're probably getting towards the end of your call where if someone's not making a change after logic trapping like this, they are basically becoming irrational. And that's when you schedule a follow-up, and you guys will see a follow-up breakdown next week on the different types of follow-up you can use. I'll link that video down below too once that's posted. But essentially, after you are tying back logic, like you're allowing them to think again, oh yeah, they've done it for a bajillion other people, why couldn't they do it for me? We want to get permission to pimp slap them. And sometimes people who aren't able to come to these conclusions on themselves, and the reason we ask permission to pimp slap someone is to be even more direct with them. And we're about to challenge another way of their thinking. In general, people are way more open to feedback and looking at things a different way when you ask them if they're open to it in the first place. Because if you think about anyone in general, if they just start projecting their beliefs onto you, like you should do this, you should do that, this is how it should be, you are pushing them away, because there's an old saying that telling is not selling. And so we need to help people lead them to this conclusion. And there's a certain point at which you can be direct with people, but in this situation, we want to ask them questions a lot to trap them again. So we're going to say, hey, can we make a suggestion? Yeah. I mean, is it fair to say the only difference between you doing 100K a month and you doing 500K a month is your decision-making process? Because if you had the same decision-making process of someone making 500K a month, you'd already be there, right? Can you see that? They're saying yes at every point, because if they're like, no, I wouldn't be, like that makes no sense. If you make decisions like the person you want to be, you'd already be them. Because another like little analogy you can use is if you think about someone who's fit and someone who's overweight, if you eat like a fat person, you're going to be fat. If you eat like a fit person, you're going to be fit. And if you work out and do the activities of those people, if you act like them, you will become them. It's just a matter of time. That's the exact same thing you can use here with business. There's no difference. If you act like a business owner who's doing 500K a month, meaning you pay for consulting, you actually get help, you grind it out, you do an insane amount of volume, you give yourself time, you don't give up. Inevitably, you will get there. It's only a matter of time and you acting consistently like that person. One of my favorite lines to ask right here then is saying, so at any given point in your life, does it ever make sense to act any differently than the best versions of ourselves would at any given moment? And so I know that sounds a little funny, but that's why I slow it down so they can really internalize what I'm saying. So that you're going to say again, once you get clear on the fact that it doesn't make sense to act any differently than the best versions of themselves would, and you can even throw in at after this point too, like, does it ever make sense if you're trying to lose weight to act any differently than a fit person, given you're trying to lose weight? Like, does it ever make sense to eat fucking Cheetos lay on the couch knowing you're trying to lose weight? Does it ever make sense to not act in alignment with who you want to be? And they're going to say no. They're like, cool. And you're going to say, right. And we can only change what's in front of us but will the best version of you overcome what you're feeling head on, or let it overcome them? And so that's, again, another question that helps them internalize that the best version of them would, again, just overcome what they're feeling. And so that's another thing you can do, is you can ask right after this, given that it doesn't make any sense to act any differently than the best version of yourself would, what would the business owner doing $500K a month, like if John, David, Calvin, whatever, Calvin doing $500K a month, what would he do in a moment like this to solve his main bottleneck in his business? Like, he would just invest the funds. So knowing the best version of you would do that, and it doesn't make any sense to not act in alignment with that person, what do you feel like you need to do to actually become them? And so if you notice, like, the body language I'm using, I'm literally holding up like this person and I'm like pointing at him. Like, what do you need to do to become this person, knowing that this person would just buy the consulting or buy the services to fix the problem in their business? And so it just makes it like extremely obvious what they need to do to actually fix their problem. So that's exactly how I'd handle fear. The last thing you can do, which is obviously not on here, but a little nuance for watching this video, is that if someone still is like, yeah, I'm still going to think about it, like they can't make a decision in this case, that is when you have to be extremely direct. And whenever you're positioning like this, you want to do the same thing while you're asking them permission to slap them around. And so what you're going to say, can I be really direct with you right now, because I genuinely care and I don't want to see you continue to fall into the same trap? And they're going to say, yeah, because any business owner who has high sophistication and high ego, which is most people, especially in this, and when they're somewhat successful, they're gonna say, yeah, I'm not a bitch. Like, tell me whatever you want to tell me. Like, yeah, I'm not a bitch. Like, you can just tell me, because in this space, whenever you're talking to a sophisticated business owner, they usually have a pretty decent sized ego, especially when they experience some success. And that's when they're like, yeah, I'm not a bitch. Like, tell me whatever you want to tell me. This is where you just go straight for the kill. Like, you just need to be extremely direct. Like, tell them the things that they absolutely need to hear. If you didn't give a shit about the outcome of the call, like, you don't, like, that's the exact mentality you want to have, is I don't care if this person closes or not. This is what they need to hear, that they're just not getting through their head. And so I'll give you an example. For a business owner who's doing 100K a month, they want to get to 500K a month, I'll literally be extremely direct and just be like, hey, brother, I understand where you're coming from. Like, you're looking for more certainty, but if I'm being brutally honest right now, again, that is never coming. And if you never take the actions required that the version of you doing 500K a month would do, you're simply never going to get there. Are you okay with me saying that? Like, yeah, of course. Because at the end of the day, if you're always waiting for absolute certainty, something that you and I both know is never going to come, what do you feel like is going to happen? What does that mean for your business? When you're being very direct like that, it's something that they need to hear. And you can notice my tonality and the way I'm speaking is a lot more like stern. Like, you need to hear this, you need to get this to your head, but I'm still showering in little phrases like I'm on your team. And I only say this because I care. Again, whenever you're literally saying your intentions out loud, they're way more likely to internalize it and be like, all right, this guy's like really just trying to help me. Like, it's not just about the sale. Because like, obviously you want to sell them, but whenever you have that positioning, they're way more likely to buy because you're just being super real and direct with them. You guys can take this even a step further. Like, you're going to have so much more ammunition because you have a full discovery with them, but you can use little points that they had mentioned, or like if they need to, for example, this is kind of like brutal. Like, you kind of do with this what you will and go to the extent that you want to go at. But if someone is a business owner and they're trying to take care of their family, and right now they're kind of struggling to do that, and they're not investing because they're just like scared, but they're not going to die or something if they like pay the investment. Like, I believe in ethical selling. Like, don't take someone's last dollar by any means, unless you're like absolutely confident that you're going to get them their result and there's like actually some type of guarantee that protects them. Because I think it's just messed up if you're not confident in your service delivery, you take someone's last dollar and it actually affects their life. Like, it's just not worth it. What you want to do, you can say something like, how much more money do you want to leave on the table before you actually make this change? You can be real with me. Like, well, not that much money, whatever. Well, if you continue to leave them on the table and you can't support your family the way you want to, then you can say, right now, you're not able to support your family the way you want to. And it's because of this exact mentality you have right now. You're not willing to get outside of your comfort zone and take action in spite of it being a little bit uncertain, even though that you and I both know it's required to get to the next level. Just be brutally honest with me. It doesn't matter if you move forward or not with us, with someone else. I need you to internalize that right now you're choosing to not change your life because you're scared. And then that's where their ego can kick in. And obviously conversation can get a little bit heated here. But whenever you're super direct like that, their ego gets into it. Like, no, I'm not scared. I'm like, cool. So if you're not scared, and that's where their ego gets into it. And so that's when they're like, no, I'm not scared. Then what do you know? What comes up? You're going to ask them, okay, but why though? Why are you not scared to actually make this change? And they're going to start to reverse sell themselves on the fact that, well, because, you guys have done it for 10 other people or 20 other people just like me. I don't see any reason I wouldn't get the results. And they just start selling you on the fact of like why they're not scared to make a change. So it's like, cool, knowing that you're not scared of the results you're going to get, you can afford the investment. All of that makes sense. Does it make sense to get started? And that's like your last and final straw to be able to ask for the sale. If that doesn't work still and they're still just being super rational, that's when you just schedule a follow-up, send value-driven follow-up in the meantime. And like I said, go check out the video below for how to do follow-up that you'll see as well. And stay tuned for that as well. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. You guys can see any new videos that come out there. But that is where you just want to schedule a follow-up, because clearly after 3 reframes and you being extremely direct, there's still not getting it, number one, that's probably not an awesome client if they can't even internalize these like basic things. But number two, it's not even worth your time. You might as well just go speak with someone else who is more likely to like actually make that change. All right. So that was the think about it, objection, word track, and whole flow of that and how that would go. Now, what I want to show you is one more thing. If someone says that they cannot afford it, let's say it's a logistical thing, they just don't have the money, that's when you're just going to say this, and this is really straightforward, but you're just going to say, hey, I think it's not a problem. Of course, we're here to solve whatever the problem is. Of course, we're here to fix the marketing so that you can make more money to the point where this investment doesn't have to be an issue for us. So money's the easiest part. Like we can always figure that out. But what I can't help with is your willingness to making this work financially. And we can spend our time together thinking about all the reasons that we couldn't come up with the funds, or we can do the opposite. What do you feel like is a more effective use of our time though? And it just literally forces them on the fact that they need to get resourceful instead of just focusing on all the things that they can't do. And then you're just gonna ask them, are you open to having an honest conversation around the finances? That's when you go open wallet. And so open wallet is literally just finding out what do they save month to month after bills, how much they have in their savings, what's their credit score if you have financing options. And then from there, you're just gonna make a payment plan. And then the most important part of the payment plan they need to do is just tie it down. Hey, can you see how that investment, just the 2K over 3 months, fits inside your budgetary constraints and it's not gonna conflict with your bills? And they're like, yes, because it's really important that you tie down the payment plan. Then you're like, cool, given the investment makes sense, you clearly see how we're gonna be able to help you get the results you're looking for, and all that makes sense. Does it make sense to get started? Super simple, cut and dry. And if they are hesitant there and you clarify logistics, and again, you already tied out value, you're just gonna go over here to fear and handle the objection exactly like we just did there. The next section I wanna go over, which is the other main objection, that I need to go talk to my partner. And so the most important thing with talking to someone's partner is you have to clarify, is it logistical or is it fear? And this is the same thing with money, partner, whatever. There's always going to be a logistical objection with money, like they literally don't have the funds, or fear, which is what we just went over, like they're just a bit uncertain around investing the funds. Same thing with partner. It could be a logistical thing, like they literally in their operating agreement cannot make decisions and pay anything without consent from their business partner. Like it's again, in their operating agreement, or it could be fear where they're just using that as an excuse or a smokescreen because they don't want to have to make a decision on the call. And so this is exactly how you isolate that first to clarify if it's logistical or if it's fear. So the first thing you're going to say is like, yeah, it's not a company here. Is this a case where you need to get their approval first, or it's just like an FYI conversation? And every egotistical business owner is going to say, no, it's just an FYI. I just got to let them know. Like I'm the one who runs the show around here. If they do say, no, I need their approval, like they're literally like they're not the actual owner or whatever the case is, then you're going to handle it logistically and you'll see how to do that. But if they say it's just an FYI conversation, then you're going to go over here. You're going to say, okay, just taking your partner out of the equation for a moment. With what we covered, would you do this? And if they're like, yes, then you're like, okay, why? Well, I do it because of X, Y, and Z things that we talked about that are gonna help our business. Then you're like, cool. With the investment itself, would that like put you on the streets or anything crazy, conflict with bills? Like how is that looking? When you clarify that, again, you're just clarifying logistics and value right up top here. So then they say, no, investment's good. You know, this is why I would move forward personally. Then you're just gonna go down this partner frame. The first thing you're gonna say is, got it. Well, are they aware of like the problems you guys are facing? Like they're super aware of the marketing issue, like the fact you guys don't have no lead flow that's affecting your guys' sales team. Like, yeah. How do they feel about you guys having experienced all this? Or what do they think about you guys having to deal with the shitty marketing, the shitty leads, the lack of lead flow? Like, yeah, they obviously don't like it either. Like, okay, cool. Are they supportive of you fixing this? And they're like, yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure you guys wouldn't be in business together if you didn't ultimately trust each other. But at the end of the day, like whose responsibility is it to fix this? Like whose sole responsibility is it to fix this? Is it you or your partner? Right here, we want them to take ownership over it. And this is something you need to tap in discovery as well so that you get the answer you want, which is you want them to say, well, at the end of the day, it's my sole responsibility. Because in discovery, if you follow the AC framework, which I will once again will link below, the whole point is to pre-handle this where we find out, hey, whose sole responsibility is it to fix this problem? And we always say that they have to say it is their responsibility, because then you can leverage that here in objection in it. Because if they're like, oh no, it's both of us, then you can say, well, help me understand for a moment. I know you mentioned earlier that this was your sole responsibility to fix. So like what shifted? And you're just calling them out on incongruence and being direct with them. Like, yeah, like, I mean, at the end of the day, it is my role to like fix this problem. Because you can just clarify, like, are you the one in charge of fixing the marketing, or is it them when they're doing operations? And they're like, no, like, yeah, it is my responsibility. And so it gets them to take ownership over it in the first place, because if it's their responsibility, you're going to see here in a second, we're then going to ask them, if they were here, like your partner, and they had this entire conversation, is there anything you feel like they'd be against, like they just wouldn't be on board with? This is like the best question to top everything, because they're going to say, oh yeah, it's actually this thing. And they're going to give you the real objection, which you'll then handle. Or maybe it's just uncertainty, fear, whatever, or like invested in 2 other agencies before and it just didn't go so well. Like, you know, that's fear based on how they're talking about it. But if they're like, no, I don't see anything they wouldn't be on board with, you're just going to sum it up and make it sound ridiculous. You're going to say like this. You're going to say, so basically, they don't like the problem. They trust you and are supportive of you fixing it. At the end of the day, it's your responsibility. And you don't see anything that they would be against. So why don't we just get this rolling? And you know what? If you go to them and you're like, hey, remember that problem that we just absolutely fucking hate with the leads and like our sales team's fucking pissed at us? Yeah, I just solved that. And if they're like, what the fuck, bro? Like, why would you fix all these problems and scale the business and make our sales guys happy? Like, dude, I'll just send you your money back. Cool. And when you frame it like that, you make it sound ridiculous on how that conversation would go with their partner for them actually taking action to solve their problems because of the questions that we just went through. And then from there, if they still object, you're going to go through a fear reframe, which is like, all right, well, let's say hypothetically, humor me for a second. If you knew that working together was guaranteed to get you to whatever results you're looking for, would you do it? Or would you still need to go like speak to your partner for permission? And you can be careful with the permission part. You can always say like, or would you just need to go speak with your partner? You can do permission if that's like how you're being super stern on it, but you're going to say, would you do it? Or would you still need to go speak to your partner? And so like, yeah, I would still need to go speak to my partner. Then you know it's like a logistical thing at that point. If results are guaranteed and you still got to go talk, then like, yeah, it's very logistical. But if they're like, no, I would do it, then you know it's fear. And then what do you know? You go through the same fear reframe to help them overcome that. Now, let's say they're like, yeah, I don't know, it's just how I always make decisions. I need to take 24 hours. It's just what I do, whatever. You're going to ask them. So one little nuance with this is I want you to know that whenever someone says, this is how I just always make decisions, I need 24 hours, like they're giving you like a shotgun or machine gun of objections. A lot of times it just boils down to the way they're making decisions. Like they don't really need 24 hours. But if they specifically say, can you just give me 24 hours? This is the reframe you'd use. So you'd say, what's behind you wanting to delay 24 hours knowing nothing will change? And then boom, you get the real objection. You just keep doubling down on these questions to identify the real objections. But if they're like, yeah, I might think of some questions in the next 24 hours. You're gonna say, cool, based on what I covered, was anything unclear? No. Is the process something you feel confident in to help you fix the lead generation? Like you can see how Facebook and everything is gonna be the thing in our system that we implement. And they're like, yeah, no, I see how that solves the problem. Once again, you're gonna say, hey, can I be direct with you? And you're just literally, I always call it calling out the elephant in the room. Like you're just saying the thing that you know needs to be said to ultimately help them get to their desired outcomes. You're gonna say, can I be direct with you? Like, yeah, you're an intelligent guy. If there was something that was truly off, it would have already come to mind. In the world's craziest event, you think of a question that just flips everything we talked about on its head, where you feel like we can't help you anymore. Like, dude, we'll just send you your money back. So why don't we just get rocking? And if they still object, that's when, once again, you can just go back to the uncertainty reframe, which is what it boils down to. So super simple. Now, if we go over, this is how I always make decisions. You're just going to say, sure, that makes sense. And this might sound a bit redundant, but are you completely satisfied with where your business is at? Or you can say this, like, this might sound super obvious, but hear me for a second. Are you completely satisfied with where your business is at? Like, no. Well, can I make a suggestion? Or can I point something out? And they're like, yeah. Imagine this. We are the sum of all decisions we've ever made. Can you see that? Oh, yeah. So the only difference between you doing 100K a month and you doing 500K a month is your decision-making process. Because if you have the decision-making process of someone making 500K a month, fundamentally, you already be there. Am I crazy to say that? Like, no. Right. So in order to get different results than what you're experiencing now, do you feel like we have to make the same types of decisions, or do you feel like we have to make different types of decisions to get different results? Like, well, obviously we got to make different decisions. Well, why? Well, because if we just do the same thing, like we're just going to obviously get the same results. A lot of sophisticated business owners and people who don't want to answer these questions, or like they know what you're doing, is because a lot of times they will say, obviously, but if it was so obvious, they would just do the things they know they need to do. And so that's why we still go through it. And if anytime at any point during any of these objection-handling reframes, what I was talking about in the beginning about, if they're like, hey, I know what you're doing, just like get to the point, or I'll reach back out to you, whatever. It's like, hey, but I'm not trying to do anything to you. I'm trying to do something for you. Do you know the difference? I promise, like it's not super obvious. And they're like, yeah, I mean, doing something to me is like whatever the definition is. You just tell them. Doing something to you would be like me just like only saying any of this stuff just to get a sale, which is like the complete opposite of what I'm trying to help you do. I genuinely just don't want to see you fall into this trap that you've been falling into. And you know, and we can do is to break the fourth wall. You just say, yeah, and you know exactly what I'm doing, right? Like I'm sure you do the same thing where you help understand your prospects concerning your own business, or do you just like let them go every time? And if they're like, nah, just let them go. I'm like, well, can you see how that's part of the reason you're not where you want to be? So you just literally attach that to their problem. But if they're like, no, like I try to understand what's going on. Like, why do you do that? And every time you do that, are you just doing it for the money? Like that's the only reason you do it? Or do you genuinely also want to help them? Like, no, like I do want to help them. You're helping them realize that they are being incongruent by not allowing you to help them overcome those objections and concerns in general. So that's when you're just going to say something along the lines of, because after you get them to admit they objection handle their own prospects to help them, you can literally just say, I'm ultimately just doing the same thing here. And like the fact that you know what I'm doing, you know why it's so important. And so whether you work with us or someone else, like the most important thing is that we cover this, because if this doesn't get solved, it doesn't matter who you speak to or what you do. So be real with me, and you just go right back to whatever reframe that you're on or whatever objection that you're handling. And then you're going to say, in this situation, right, whenever we just went over that they have to make different decisions to get different results, you're going to say, but what happens if you continue to use the same decision-making process that got you here, but hasn't gotten you to where you want to be? So it's like a lot more direct. Say, oh, I'll stay the same, or things won't change, whatever. And does it ever make any sense to act any differently than the best version of yourself would at any given moment? The same thing we're using in the past. And so another even simpler way of saying this is, does it ever make any sense to not act in alignment with the best version of yourself? Super simple. And then you're going to say, so what would the best version of you do, the one doing 500K a month, knowing he has to make different decisions to get different results so that he doesn't continue to experience whatever the status quo is, continue to experience the shitty leads or the lack of lead volume. Like, what does he actually do? Well, he would solve the problem. Like, he would actually get it fixed. So given the best version of you, the one doing 500K a month would do it, and it doesn't make any sense to act any differently than they would, what do you need to do to become them? So it's the exact same reframe you're going to use as a secondary one in the fear flowchart. And then boom, if they still object, you're going to go straight to fear. So they're just kind of flip flop. If you know, hypothetically speaking, that working together was guaranteed to get you the results, would you do it? And they're like, yeah. Then cool, they should admit it. It's really fear. And so either way, this is literally how to cover the main objections of I need 24 hours. This is how I make decisions, partner, money, fear, literally everything under the sun of these smoke screens. Now I'm going to go over these little nuanced smoke screens. And this is probably one that you get quite a bit, which is I need to talk to other companies. And then that's way more expensive than I thought it was. So whenever someone says that something is more than they were expecting, they're comparing it to something. And that sounds obvious, but if you think about what they're comparing it to, they're comparing it to the costs instead of what they're getting out of it. If you think about people in real estate, if everyone ever, including yourself, was just solely focused on your down payment and not the asset that you're getting, how many people would buy a property? Pretty much no one. We need to switch what they're comparing expensive to in their mind and start getting to focus on the actual results they're getting instead of just their current financial situation in their bank account. And so that's why you ask these three simple words, which is compared to what? And they're going to say, oh, well, compared to my situation or just where we're at right now. You say, well, how about compared to where your business would be if lead generation was fixed, your sales guys were booked out? Because if you were making an extra $500,000 a year, would 10K a month be a lot of money to you then? You're going to say, well, no. Okay, so what's really more expensive than like you investing to solve this problem when it comes to lead generation or not fixing it and continuing to leave $50,000 a month on the table? And it makes it very clear, right? Like we're showing them it is more expensive to not solve your problem than it is to fix it, just logically speaking. And so then we just ask them, what do you need to do to make sure we stop leaving that money on the table and start putting it back in your pocket? Well, I got to do something. Well, you don't have to, but like, why do you feel like you need to? Well, because if I don't, then I'm going to continue leaving that money on the table. Then you just go straight down the path of, okay, cool. So what do you feel like you need to do to make sure that we actually put that money in your pocket instead of leaving on the table? So it just re-loops back to this part here to get them to say they got to take action. Now, the next thing I want to cover with you is every single smokescreen objection. And a lot of these are very similar. So like I said, it seems complicated, but it's actually really simple. So a lot of people might say, oh, can I talk to some referrals? Or can you send me an agreement? Can you send this via an email, whatever? So we'll go over the referrals first. First thing you want to do is just normalize whatever they're feeling. Like as far as objections go, you want to make sure they feel like normal about their concern and just slow your pacing. Like you want to be fairly calm and just chill about it and just be human. And what I mean by human is like, don't be robotic. Don't be like extremely scripted. You're just going through the general thought process of what we're covering. So you're going to say, sure, yeah, that's not a problem. If I get a client to have that conversation with you, I mean, do you think they're going to say anything negative or would it probably mostly be positive stuff? So yeah, I mean, it'd probably be pretty positive. And you say, right. And I'm also like the first person that wants to hear all the amazing things that our clients want to say about us, but you and I both know how that conversation is going to pan out. So you can be direct with me, like what's behind you wanting to have that conversation in the first place? And then it gets them to be real with you, right? Because you're like, hey, you can be direct with me. Like what's behind that? And they give you the real objection, or they're just, use language of fear. And what I mean by that is someone could be saying, yeah, like, it's just because it's a big investment, blah, blah, blah. Whenever someone says a big investment and you've already clarified they have the money, then you know it's fear because it's just a lot of money to them at the moment, which is just a fear-based thing because you're taking a good amount of their money to be able to invest into their business and actually fix their issues. To this question here too, if they're like, how do you think that conversation is going to go? And they're like, I don't know. That's why I ask. I want to see answers that aren't mostly positive. And all you'll do is ask, well, if you genuinely thought about it, you ask anyone for a referral, they'll send you someone who speaks highly of them. Is that crazy to say? They're like, well, no. Then it goes straight back to it. So it's like, and right. And I'm also the first person that wants to hear all the amazing things our clients have to say, right? So it just goes straight back into this loop. So super straightforward there. If someone's like, hey, can you just send me the agreement before we get this rolling? You always want to clarify first, is it really just the agreement or is there something else behind that? And it's super simple. Literally basically just asking that. So you're just like, sure, yeah, it's not a problem. Like given everything we went over is in alignment with the agreement itself, would it then make sense to get started or is there anything else to be holding back? And you can be real with me. And then they either give you the real objection, like, oh, I have this concern or there's this thing that they're stuck up about, or they're like, no, nothing will stop me. Then you're like, cool, let's go over the agreement on the call. And then you literally share your screen, pull up the agreement, go through it with them and then be super assumptive. Cool. Does that all make sense? Everything check out, handle any concerns they have, like go over whatever, if you have a guarantee, whatever stipulations you have, etc. And then make sure they're in agreement with the agreement. And then from there, you're like, cool, all that makes sense. The agreement, everything we're covering, the results you're going to be getting, and ultimately the investment all makes sense. So given all that stuff makes sense can you see that makes sense to get started? And they're like, cool. So you're just very assumptive after you go over the agreement, given they've already clarified that there's nothing else behind them just wanting to go through the agreement. Now, one of these other ones where they're just like, yeah, can you just send this to me in an email? Anytime you get this, it's basically just a think about it objection. So I just literally want you to go over to the think about it flow. You're just like, yeah, it's not a problem. We can definitely do that. But you can be direct with me like, what's really behind that? Like, what's behind you wanting to get all this in an email? And anytime you want to break the fourth wall with any objection at all, like any ones we've gone over, is literally just by saying, hey, like we're both in business. You can be real with me. Like, what's behind you wanting to see an email aside from just like revisiting everything we covered? Like, you can be direct with me. And it's just like leveling with them, like my tonality, my body language. I'm kind of smiling because it's like, yeah, we know what's going on. Like, just be real with me what's going on. And when you have that level of like that demeanor, that body language, that tonality, they're just so much more likely to be honest with you. And so that's what I mean when I constantly say, just be human. Like, it sounds hilarious, but literally just be as normal as possible and really focus on breaking the fourth wall, especially when they're more sophisticated, and just being like, hey, I get it. Like, you don't have to tell me you need to go see an email. Like, just help me understand what's the real concern. And it really just helps people just be so much more honest, because like, oh, thank God he's not another sales guy who's just going to hit me with this crazy heavy is the head that wears the crown, or this like random reframe that just is super irrelevant when you can be way more direct, especially in the beginning with these. Now, granted, some things need a reframe, but in a lot of these cases, you can be pretty direct with people and just ask leading questions instead. Very straightforward on how you deal with it. If someone's like, yeah, I just want to see and make sure everything's the right fit. If you've already tied up value and logistics, you just go straight to fear, but never handle fear first. Always go through value, then logistics, and then to the main objection, which is fear. Now, let's say someone's like, yeah, I need to talk to other companies first. You're going to say, hey, can I offer a perspective around that? There's a million ways you can basically say, hey, can I be direct with you? Or like, would you be open to looking at that from a different point of view? I know this is a very like B2C line of can I offer a perspective around this, etc. And it goes against like, oh, they know exactly what you're doing, right? But at the end of the day, if you are able to ask someone if you can be direct with them, they are way more likely to allow you to be direct with them and not take it as a personal attack, because you already asked ahead of time. So like, if you're a manager or you are an offer owner, anytime you want to give an employee constructive feedback, you literally ask them, hey, are you open to some feedback? That way you're not just immediately criticizing them. Like, they said they were okay with it. And so when they give you the approval and the green light to go, hey, yeah, say whatever, then they're so much more receptive to it. So if you're not already doing that, definitely do that for your employees. In this situation, when someone is saying, oh, I want to talk to other companies, part of this is being able to pre-handle it in discovery, because if you're not pre-handling this properly, that's going to be a big issue. What's really important is that in the agency section for our agency closure framework, if you don't know that framework or how it works or anything, there's a whole breakdown that you guys can check out below. Whenever this happens in the agency section, the question that we ask is, once you find the right company that's aligned with what you're looking for, the investment itself, like, does it conflict with any bills or anything crazy like that? Is there any reason, even like logistically speaking, you wouldn't be able to move forward at that point? And so this is covering any like random logistical issues, like any BS they can give you, it just totally eliminates it. But then it also tells you that they're just looking for the right thing that fits inside their budgetary constraints without conflicting with their bills. And so as long as those two things check out, one of those things has to be missing, which a lot of times is either just fear, or maybe there's actually something about your value proposition that they don't like or don't see a lot of certainty in. Maybe it's the way you position yourself in your pitch, or the proof you were showing wasn't concrete enough. There's a lot of reasons that someone could want to go talk to other companies, but when you build so much more leverage through discovery by clarifying that first, they're so much more likely to be able to overcome it right here on the call. So first thing you're gonna ask them is say, hey, can I be direct with you? I'm like, yeah. Can I share this? Like, I'm like, you're just gonna say, can I share perspective around this? Like, talking with other guys? Like, yeah, sure, whatever. If you lost your keys and you found them in the first room you looked in, like, would you just keep looking? Like, no, because no one would. Like, it's just a waste of time, right? And then you're gonna say, well, do you feel like, based on what I went over, that this is the keys to fix your lead generation issues, so you can get higher quality leads and just get more leads in general? And they're gonna say no, yes, or I don't know. And if someone says no, you're gonna say, all right, well, what's missing from what I've covered that makes you feel like this is not the keys? And they're either gonna say like a deliverables concern, like, oh, you don't have a call center, but these other guys had a call center, so you have to handle that. Like, how do you address speed to lead, for example, in that case? Or a more real objection is that they're like, yeah, I mean, everything sounds great, but I don't know, it's just a lot of money. Like, that's like, a lot of that language is very fear-based. So then you go over to this fear reframe. And the first thing you want to ask too is just getting clear on like, well, if you knew this was guaranteed to work out, would it even be a question if we're moving forward? And like, we would just be rolling right now. And like, yeah, like we would just be going. And you know it's fear, right? Anytime you suspect it's fear, you can always ask that question. If hypothetically speaking, like, humor me for a second, if you knew this was going to work out, would we be moving forward right now? And then there's nothing they can do besides say yeah, because if something's guaranteed, everyone's going to do the thing. But the caveat is nothing is guaranteed in life. And that's what we have to help them realize as well. And so then if someone's like, oh, I don't know if it is the keys, then you can ask them something so simple like, well, you'll never know for a fact until what? Well, until I try it, is what you got to get them to admit. So then you're going to say, well, exactly. But based on what I have covered, does that feel like the keys to solve your lead generation issue? Like with how we use the system, the strategy, etc. And then they're going to say yes. And you're going to keep doubling down on that until they say yes. So then you can just ask them, okay, but why though? And once you tie that down, you're then going to consequence what happens to business owners who just shop around, even though they could solve the problem so much sooner. And so the way you do that is you're going to say, well, as we both know, the best business owners, they take calculated risks. But what happens to those business owners who continue checking every room for the keys when they're in front of them and in their hands the whole time? And if they understand it, they're going to say, well, they're just going to waste a bunch of time. And if they don't, you can double down on it again and just ask them, if you have keys right in your hands and you just keep opening doors looking for keys that are already in front of your hands, what are you doing? You're just wasting a shit ton of time, right? So given that this feels like the keys to solve your lead generation issue, the keys are literally in your hands and the investment won't put you on the streets, not going to conflict with bills, all of that makes sense. You can see how it makes sense to get started. That is the easiest way to handle the shop around boring and really simplest, because all you're doing is just clarifying that your solution is the keys to their problem, and you're already tying down in discovery that they just need something that's aligned with what they're looking for. The investment doesn't break the bank. And at that point, all that's left is fear. So if they still give you an objection here, that's when you're just going to go to fear, because they already clarified that the investment's good, the value is good. That's all they're looking for to make a decision. And it just comes down to uncertainty. So that's when you'll go to fear. And the last little analogy that, if you guys like analogies, you can use for fear objections. And fear, I think, is helpful for analogies for people to understand stuff. It's just a way of like teaching someone anything. It's just enjoyable too. Like whenever you tell a story, you guys probably know of the protagonist bias, where you play, like you imagine yourself in the story, like the main character, like that's, you envision yourself being that person. And so it's a more subtle way of communicating a point as far as like doing that and being direct. There's a certain spectrum of being like super direct and then being indirect. You don't want to be so indirect, again, that you're in a spot where they don't really understand what you're saying, or they feel like you're tiptoeing to like get to the point, but you don't want to be so direct that they get like pissed off and then it doesn't land because you're telling them what to do instead of helping them come to that conclusion. So it's a fine balance. It's like you're going back and forth between being slightly indirect but then being leaning towards the edge of being a lot more direct with these people. Analogy you can use here as an option one, when someone's like, yeah, but kind of knew what I was going to have in my business, blah, blah, blah. Or if they're still not getting the point behind what you're saying, of that there's never going to be absolute certainty, you can ask them, hey, do you have kids? And they're like, yeah. When they were born, did you tell them every single thing that they try in life is guaranteed to work out? They're like, no. Okay, well, why not? Well, because everything is not guaranteed. It's like, exactly. You and I both know nothing in life is guaranteed. Marketing agency can make you guarantee you get hit by a bus tomorrow. What happened to the guarantee? I thought it was guaranteed, right? They just don't exist. And that's when you continue on with the flow. So then you're going to say, it's the same thing at every stage of business. You're never going to know. Can you see how looking for absolute certainty? So then you're going to continue with the flow, and you're going to say it's the same thing at every stage of business. You're never going to know. So you can see at every stage to level up, there's going to be a lack of clarity, right? And then you just keep going through it. That literally covers every single objection you can possibly get. Think about it. Partner, any type of real objection, like logistical money, or they think it's expensive. Partner, it's just how I make decisions. I need 24 hours. Fear, like literally everything you think of with smoke screen objections. Can I talk to your referrals? Can you send me an agreement? You send this all to me in email. Can I talk to other companies? Every single objection is covered in here, as well as how to tie value and how to clarify logistics. So I want you to use this as a resource and actually study it, because you now know how to handle every single objection, like the word tracks behind it, everything. The problem is, if you don't actually use this, none of this matters. Information without implementation means nothing. And so it's really crucial that you study this, you watch this video a bunch of times, you go through this Miro. And if you want access to this Miro, if you've been like looking in the description for it, this one, you gotta hit me up on Instagram for it. If you want it, shoot me a DM, and I want to make sure I help you get access to this thing. But also I want to see if I can help you with any questions you guys have around it, or what's your most common objections that you're getting. So if you want access to this flowchart, hit me up on Instagram. But also, when I do give you access to it, I need you to actually implement it. And the reason it's so important is because you watch this whole video, or maybe you skipped around, looked at certain objections. It's not as simple as you watch one video one time, you hear these reframes one time, and all of a sudden you can just say it, all of them, and you're just the GOAT at objection handling. Like, you need to study this an insane amount of times. You need to read through each word track an insane amount of times, and you need to really focus on your intentions and your tonality behind how you're handling objections. And I promise you, you will close way more fucking deals, just like all of these guys on screen. If you want to collect way fatter retainers, you want to be able to objection handle every single objection for B2B, DM me on Instagram at Calvin.Angel, shoot me a message, and I will shoot this over to you ASAP. As always, hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one.